Welcome to the UK news on September 23rd in 2021. And today we start in Northern Ireland. The focus of the ministerial meeting of EU foreign ministers was on cooperation on Corona, as well as issues relating to Brexit and Northern Ireland. Britain wants to delete the part of the agreement that keeps the border between the North and Ireland open. The EU made it clear that it did not want to give in. And as you know, Maros Šefčovič, Vice President of the European Commission, is responsible, and he said, the solutions we are looking for will be within the framework of the Ireland and Northern Ireland Protocol. We are absolutely convinced that the protocol is the best solution we can work with, and the UK will have to deal with this unique situation on the island of Ireland because it means stability, security, and predictability. Brussels also warns the UK that extending border checks for certain goods cannot last forever. And staying in Northern Ireland, let's talk about the DUP for a second. The Good Friday Agreement of 1998 forms the basis for the peace process in Northern Ireland, and it did end the 30-year troubles between the Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists that had claimed 3,600 lives. The agreement provides for open borders between Northern Ireland, which is part of Great Britain, and the Republic of Ireland. In order to ensure these open borders, even after Brexit, the protocol was agreed in the British EU exit agreement that provides for Northern Ireland to remain in the EU internal market, initially limited to 4 years. As a result, goods must be checked on the border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. The Johnson administration had promised this in a very different way. Only over my corpse there would be such a limit, he had promised. Since the exit from the EU came into force, these provisions have been enforced, and with serious consequences. British exports to Northern Ireland collapsed in the first 6 months of 2021 with a minus of 20%, according to Central Statistics Office. Shelves in supermarkets remain empty, and 900 drugs are suddenly not approved. These difficulties have serious political consequences, especially for the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, which, together with the nationalist Sinn Féin, leads a combined government in Belfast under the Good Friday Agreement. Their new party leader, Jeffrey Donaldson, is now ultimately calling for a renegotiation of the Northern Ireland Johnson Protocol. Otherwise, he threatens his party's exit from the government. The DUP is under multiple pressure. For one thing, the party was an advocate of a hard Brexit, even though the Northern Irish had voted against leaving the EU by a majority. Only now it is dawning on many in the DUP that they were first used by the Conservatives in London and then dropped. As a result of the party's loss of authority, more radical groups are now setting the tone in the unionist camp, who are not demanding renegotiation, but rather the deletion of the protocol without replacement. It will kill the union with Great Britain, says Jim Allister of the traditional unionist voice. The serious riots in April have not been forgotten either, and Donaldson warns, if the fear of the people continues to increase, we will soon see them on the streets again. Nevertheless, recent polls leave the DUP's threat to withdraw from the government appear rather empty. Among the unionists, the TUV is 14% ahead of the DUP with 13%. First place would go unchallenged to Sinn Féin with 25%. The party whose ultimate goal is the reunification of Ireland. So the unionists are digging their own grave. Support from London comes from Brexit State Secretary David Frost. In his grumpy manner, he warns Brussels not to underestimate our willingness to pull the emergency brake by invoking paragraph 16 and unilaterally suspend the protocol, which they can't. That would mean nothing less than checks at the inner Irish border. But the EU's Brexit representative, Maros Šefčovič, is not thinking of renegotiation, as you heard in the start of the video. That would only mean instability, uncertainty, and unpredictability, he said. And Frost replied angrily, "We expect our position to be taken seriously." Frosty, nobody can take you seriously. Behind the war of words, however, there are also pragmatic approaches on both sides. The fact that London recently approved the transitional periods for the introduction of long overdue goods checks for an unlimited period was laconically noted in Brussels. The British also had to postpone customs checks for EU imports in view of acute supply bottlenecks and, of course, a lack of preparation as usual. And now let's come to a topic I called revealed. Rumors have been circulating for many years that Boris Johnson has a child from an extramarital affair. Now the British Prime Minister has confirmed such reports. When NBC journalist Savannah Guthrie asked if he had 6 children, the politician simply replied, yes, something he had always avoided in interviews and press conferences in the past. Johnson has 4 children with his ex-wife Marina Wheeler, a daughter from the illegitimate relationship and a son with his wife Carrie Johnson, whom he married in late 2021. Johnson told NBC it was great to have a baby at Downing Street, but it was also a lot of work. But I absolutely love it, he went on. I change a lot of diapers. He knows around. Okay. In August, Carrie Johnson announced via Instagram that the couple was expecting their 2nd child. She also reported a miscarriage in 2021. Their son Wilfred was born in April 2020, shortly after Johnson was hospitalized with COVID-19 symptoms. The course of the disease was severe and Johnson was treated in the intensive care unit. Wilfred Laurie Nicholas Johnson, according to his parents, was given the first name Nicholas in recognition of the services of the doctors who saved the Prime Minister's life. According to the NBC interview, it was speculated that Johnson could have counted the unborn child in the half dozen mentioned. His biographer Andrew Gimson could not help clarify. He told the Washington Post, "I'm not a great source for how many children he has. At least Johnson's affairs and marriages would never have harmed him as a politician, because he's not a hypocrite. He never preached about marriage. And that's the only good thing he ever did." And something not that fun is something I call secrecy. The UK Ministry of Defence accidentally made the email addresses of more than 250 Afghan interpreters public. They were visible to all recipients in an email from the authority, reports the BBC. A spokeswoman for the ministry confirmed the case and announced an investigation by the authorities responsible for departures from Afghanistan. "We apologize to everyone involved in this violation, and we are working hard to prevent this from happening again," she said. According to the BBC, the email addresses were often provided with a profile photo. These were also displayed to all recipients. The mistake could kill interpreters, especially if they are still in Afghanistan, one interpreter told the BBC. The email from the ministry was supposed to inquire about the interpreter's situation and inform them that their departure to Great Britain was being prepared. Some interpreters then inadvertently replied to all those 250 addresses with a description of their own situation, as the broadcaster reported, citing those affected. According to the BBC report, 30 minutes after the first email, the ministry sent another email asking the interpreters to change their email addresses. Conservative MP and former Secretary of State in the Department of Defense Johnny Mercer wrote on Twitter of a criminally negligent incident. Many former local workers would now have to go into hiding again to avoid retaliation. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in early September that there were still 311 people with protection status in Afghanistan after the evacuation flights had ended. And now we have to talk about Skripal. The police in Great Britain have charged a 3rd suspect with a poison attack on former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Julia. As the Metropolitan Police announced on Tuesday, it is a Russian citizen named Denis Sergeyev, who is also known by the alias Sergei Fedotov. The charges include attempted murder and possession and use of a chemical weapon. The British investigators assume that it is an agent of the Russian military intelligence services, the GRU. Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged Moscow to hand over all suspects in the case. An extradition request is not made due to a lack of hope of success. The Russian ambassador will be confronted by the foreign ministry with the matter, said a British government spokesman. Skripal and his daughter were discovered in March 2018 with serious poisoning on a park bench in the southern English city of Salisbury. As it turned out later, they had been poisoned with the neurotoxin Novichok. They just got away with their life. A woman who later came into contact with the poison because of the container disguised as a perfume bottle in the neighborhood town of Amesbury has died. A man who was a friend of hers and a police officer also suffered poisoning, but both survived. Russia once again denied being involved. We firmly condemn all attempts by London to hold Moscow responsible for the incident, said Foreign Office spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, according to the TASS state agency. The case should be examined objectively and impartially. Moscow is ready for cooperation between law enforcement agencies and experts. The British investigators had so far identified the two Russians Alexander Mishkin and Anatoly Chepiga, alias Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Borisov, as suspects, who were later unmasked by journalists as GRU agents. In an interview on Russian television, the two had previously stated that they had only traveled to Salisbury as tourists to visit the beautiful city and the famous cathedral. And as far as I know, the EU is sure it was Russia too, by the way. And let's talk about wind farms. The offshore wind farms Berwick Bank and Marbank off the Scottish east coast have now been merged by the project developer into a single wind farm, which is to be called the Berwick Bank Wind Farm. With a potential capacity of 4.1 gigawatts, the Berwick Bank wind farm would be more than twice the size of the offshore wind farms currently under construction or in operation in Scotland. It would also increase Scotland's total renewable energy capacity by almost 30%. The project will be able to generate enough clean renewable energy to power more than 5 million households, which is double the number of all Scottish households, and avoid 8 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. That's the equivalent of its emissions of all Scottish cars per year. The Berwick Bank wind farm is at an advanced stage of development, and the planning application is expected to be submitted to the Scottish Government in spring 2022. If approved and given the green light to build, it could start producing clean electricity in the second half of this decade and play a key role in helping Scotland meet its short-term net zero targets, and by 2030 generate up to 11 gigawatts of new offshore wind energy. Michael Matheson, Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero Energy and Climate Change, welcomed the plans. He said, "Decarbonizing our energy is an integral part of our equitable transition to net zero energy, and our world leader in renewable energy will play a critical role in that. The continued growth of offshore wind energy over the next decade will be critical to achieving our incredible ambitious short-term climate goals, and we need to be innovative, fast and flexible to achieve this." I welcome this announcement from SSE Renewables that their commitment shows they support Scotland's one-generation contribution to climate change. And now, for a moment, we have to talk about the topic of the settlement scheme. The settlement scheme is designed to give EU citizens who entered the UK under the EU's freedom of movement principle the right to remain. By the end of June, a decision had been reached on almost 90,000 applications in Northern Ireland. Almost 95% of those applicants were granted settled or pre-settled status. Settled status is granted to people who can prove they have been in the UK continuously for 5 years or more. Those living in the UK for shorter periods of time can qualify for pre-settled status, which can be upgraded to settled status once the applicant has reached the 5-year milestone. The highest number of concluded applications in Northern Ireland so far came from Polish people with 25,670. The next highest came from Lithuanian with 12,740 and Romanian with 10,300 nationals. There was a rush of last-minute applications with about 7,500 in June compared to 2,000 each month earlier in the year in Northern Ireland. And now let's talk about consequences once more. The full impact of Brexit on both businesses and consumers will not be felt until next year, with shortages set to worsen in sectors ranging from food to building materials, a leading customs expert has claimed. Simon Sutcliffe, a partner at tax and advisory firm Blick Rothenberg, believes government delays in implementing post-Brexit customs laws have softened the impact of the UK's exit from the European Union, and that things will get worse when they are finally brought in from January 2022, if ever. Despite leaving the EU on January 1st in 2020, the government has delayed many of the customs laws that were due to come into force last year. The requirement for pre-notification of arrival in the UK of agri-food imports will be introduced on January 1st, 2022, as opposed to the already delayed date of October 1st this year. The new requirements for export health certificates will now be introduced even later, on July 1st next year. So definitely not what was planned. Preparations. Checks to protect animals and plants from diseases, pests or contaminants will also be delayed until July 2022, as will the requirement for safety and security declaration on imports. When these laws, which also include the customs declaration system, are brought in, Mr. Sutcliffe believes the food and raw material shortages already experienced to some extent, especially in Northern Ireland, will worsen on the mainland, with some products disappearing from supermarket shelves for the foreseeable future and not just temporarily. And talking about empty shelves or something, let's talk about soft drinks trouble. The British Soft Drinks Association has said manufacturers have only a few days of carbon dioxide left in reserve to produce beverages and can't import supplies from the EU. And why? Due to Brexit. The gas is also used to stun animals before slaughter and in meat packaging, with that industry also warning it could run out of the whole thing within 5 days. In the latest sign of how a widespread shortage of CO2 is causing shockwaves in Britain's food and drink sector, most carbon dioxide suppliers aren't scheduling deliveries earlier than 24 hours in advance, which means manufacturers have no visibility on stock levels or when they will receive their next batch. The trade group said that in a statement on Monday. The UK also can't rely on imports from Europe, as a Dutch plant that sources CO2 from its prioritizing EU clients, and the Norwegian plant is shortly due to close for maintenance for up to 2 weeks, the group said. Supplies of CO2 have been hit in Britain after fertilizer maker CF Industries Holding responded last week to surging natural gas prices by closing UK plants that make carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Rival Yara International is also curtailing European capacity. The knock-on effect on the food and drink industry has been sudden and dramatic, as the gas is used in a number of ways, as I said, from stunning pigs and chickens for slaughter to extending the shelf life of products and producing carbonated drinks. The shortage are compounding an already fraught UK food supply chain that has been battling to keep shelves stocked due to a lack of warehouse workers and truck drivers as a result of Brexit and the pandemic. The UK has been hit by a shortage of carbon dioxide before, namely in 2018, when operators closed production facilities down for maintenance. This time's different. The British Soft Drinks Association said with the 2 biggest fertilizer plants that supply carbon dioxide ceasing operations indefinitely. And we have to talk about the submarines again, because France has warned that upcoming Brexit talks are under threat because of Britain's breach of trust over the AUKUS submarine deal. French European Affairs Minister Clément Beaune said he would raise the trade pact at a meeting with European counterparts in Brussels after they were left out of the secret agreement. He told reporters, "We see with Brexit, we see with the AUKUS project that we first need to rebuild confidence. We need to discuss together. We are not in this context at the moment." In a thinly veiled attack on Boris Johnson, he added that the UK had joined as a junior partner after facing pressure from Joe Biden. He said, "There is a difficult relationship with the UK. We signed an agreement and we still see today that in terms of fishing and the Irish Protocol, these agreements are not well applied and they are not fully respected. So we want to be extremely clear and repeat that the agreement must be respected. It is also a question of trust, of keeping your word, of respecting the interests of Europeans. We can't say we take the things that suit us and forget about the ones that don't." The Indo-Pacific Security Pact will see Australia cancel a multi-billion-dollar contract to buy diesel-electric French submarines and acquire US nuclear-powered vessels instead, with the help of the UK. The French government is suggesting it was betrayed by the deal, which comes in the run-up to elections in France in April. "It's a matter of trust," Bohn repeated. "When you have your word, it has some value between allies, between democracies, between partners, and in this case, this word was not respected. So of course it creates a breach of trust. We have to be firm, not as French, but as Europeans, because it's a matter of the way we work together as allies," he said. Germany's Europe Minister Michael Roth said France's diplomatic crisis with the US was a wake-up call for all of us on the importance of uniting an often divided EU on foreign and security policy. Europe broke its silence and backed a furious France, which has accused the United States, Australia and Britain of working behind its back to negotiate their defense pact. The show of solidarity from Germany and the EU's top officials was welcomed by France, which said the breakdown of trust with Washington strengthened the case for Europe to set its own strategic course. Bohn called the row a European issue, not simply a French one, as I said, and he said that as he arrived at the ministerial talks in Brussels, with a chaotic US pullout from Afghanistan in August also a source of irritation among EU members. "I don't think France is overreacting, and I don't think France should overreact, but when a situation is serious, I think it's also our responsibility to state it very clearly," he said. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.